Let's see. Good morning, everyone. We're just waiting a couple more minutes just to make sure that everybody can join, and then we'll get started.
Oh, look at all these good mornings. Good morning, everyone.
Right, and early risers.
Yes, so grateful.
Okay, well, if you guys are ready, I think we have most people joined. If you get kicked out of the room at any point, you can just click the link again and you'll be able to join at any time. Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Grace Rosado. I'm on the AWD programming team this year, and this is one of the events that I've been working with, and I'm very happy to join them. And also very happy to see all of you guys early this morning. I guess at this point during a pandemic, schedule doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to. So I'm happy we all didn't have to wake up and drive early somewhere. If you want to move to the next slide, actually. If you haven't already, I suggest you guys join the Austin Design Week Slack workspace. It's a great place where we can put other resources. You guys can connect with anybody else in there. Even some of our speakers are in there if you want to try and reach out or connect after a session. It's pretty much the easiest way to connect with anybody from this year and to connect with any of our additional resources or programming. We also have quite a few resources still available on our website. And of course, the rest of the schedule in case you're interested in joining any other event for the rest of the week. And then the last slide. So I just wanted to thank our partners. Austin Design Week is nonprofit, and we basically do this every year just to really help the Austin design community grow and connect and learn from one another. And hopefully this year, I think we actually have quite a few people not from Austin joining because we're all digital, which is super exciting. So we just wanted to thank our partners. But for me, that's pretty much all I have to share this morning. If you guys have any questions, just throw them in the chat and I'll pass it off.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Grayson. And well, first thing we're going to do here is do a little bit of a plug to go to the chat and download the booklet. It should be via a Google Drive link, and you can download this booklet. If you have a Mac, you can access it and should be able to type via preview. There's a variety of ways that you can engage with it. If you've got Acrobat, you should be able to type in it. If you choose not to necessarily follow along with the booklet for today's session, this is now yours to keep. So we encourage you to go back, maybe print and then do it if you're more of an analog, tactical type of person. Or you could follow along and start jotting some notes down in a notepad. It's a variety of ways that you can engage with it. But we wanted to share this with you so that if you wanted to take it and do some quiet reflection or work alongside us, you have the ability to do so. So we're going to periodically post that as we start to get going and folks trickle in. And if you ever want to find it again, download it again, you can contact us directly from our website, antiracismactivation.com. Okay, so now that those logistics are a bit done here, I wanted to really kick off our session. We are the Anti-Racism Activation Kit team, and we're so excited to be part of Austin Design Week. It's truly an honor to give back to something that has given so much to us. And we're really excited to do a little bit of anti-racism action planning and really get to that activation piece today. So a hearty welcome, a wonderful good morning, afternoon, evening, no matter where in the world you're coming from. We're so excited to have you with us here today. A brief introduction to who we are. Who are these strangers that are going to talk to you today? My name is Ploy Baraparat. I am a UX researcher at IBM Security, and I'm really excited to be here with you, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Antiracism Activation Kit. And I'll let my other facilitators introduce themselves.
Hey there, I'm also one of the co-founders of the Antiracism Activation Kit. My name is Andy, and I'm a product designer at Atlassian.
And hello, my name is Kara Garcia. I'm an educator and librarian, and I'm actually in San Antonio, so it's great that it's virtual and I can be here.
Yes, no traffic for Kara. No traffic for any of us. Thank goodness. So wanted to give you a brief introduction on why we do this. So what we've done as we put this anti-racism activation kit and workbook together is we really wanted to create the journey of engaging anti-racism simple, easy, and able to weave into your everyday life. And we are excited for you to embrace your own activation and welcome you as part of the anti-racist community. We've done a number of these trainings over the course of this year, and it's been really great to see and connect with one another and know that we are not alone as we start to piece and part and parcel this this fight together. And one of the things that is really important here is that as anti-racist activists, we are always going to kind of take the mantle when we can and try to make action and make waves on behalf of marginalized communities that we value so much. So we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff in our time together. Again, if you're following along in the workbook, it's going to feel like it moves pretty quickly, and it will, because just due to the nature of the time that we've got together, we couldn't go and spend as much time in depth as we would like. So again, take that, it is your resource now, and feel free to connect with us if you ever have any questions about it. But in our time together for this 90 minutes here, we're going to do three key things. The first is to learn. So we're going to set an intention and learn some anti-racism fundamental definitions and philosophies. We'll have about 10 minutes in a breakout group so that we can begin to kind of network and connect with each other. Being an anti-racist is really about also forming a community around you. So we're excited to be able to connect you all. Then we're going to move into activation. So we're going to understand our own capabilities, our own capacity, and then find opportunities to do anti-racist work in our lives. And then we're going to sit down and we're going to really plan. So identify your own learning and engagement style and set a plan for activation, and we'll break out again there. We wanted to provide, again, opportunities for y'all to connect with one another as well as learn from each other. And we'd love to learn from you as well. So if you've got any questions, have any issues, definitely post it in the Zoom chat. If you had any issues getting the workbook, post it in the Zoom chat. We're here to help you. And we're going to kick started now in earnest. So before we can do anything where we talk about anti-racism work, we need to talk about racism and the definitions of racism and anti-racism. And all the definitions that we'll show you today is from How to Be an Anti-Racist from Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. And he defines it as a racist as this: one who is supporting a racist policy through their actions or inaction or expressing a racist idea. And he defines an anti-racist as this: one who is supporting an anti-racist policy through their actions or expressing an anti-racist idea. And when we read these definitions, I think they're great definitions for what these terms might mean. But what we wanted to do here today in the work that we're going to be doing together is take it from what can feel like theoretical definitions into practical frameworks that you can apply in your everyday life. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to give you our foundational philosophy, and you can use these as a basic framework as you build your own anti-racist philosophy that will suit your personal life. So our approach is this. We say we have three key tenets. First, as anti-racists, we reject the premise that one race is better than another. So we are always challenging our own racist beliefs. As anti-racists, we are also intolerant of intolerance. So we challenge the racist beliefs and actions of others. And as anti-racists, we have a bias towards action. So we will take action against racism at every given opportunity, no matter how big or small that might be. So these are the three core fundamental tenets in our personal philosophy that we teach as we onboard folks into anti-racism work. And the only thing that I want to emphasize here is that the only incorrect action is inaction. Being kind of indifferent to racism is being complicit in it. So the only incorrect action here is inaction. Okay, so we'll move on now to our first activity. It's the first thing we're going to do today, which is to create a personal vision. If you're following along in the workbook, this is at page 6. And to create a personal vision, we're going to start with a vision statement. And it can be like, oh man, I just woke up. How am I going to get to a vision statement? It's okay to kind of stub one out right now as you start to reflect and iterate on what it might be in the future. But I think this is a good activity to just practice how to do, because this will be a great way to guide your path in your anti-racism journey. So we're going to create a vision statement that essentially gives us a goalpost to work towards. And this should be personal to you and what you believe that you can actually achieve. We know that the journey of allyship is imperfect, and the vision sets us up for a destination that we see in the future. And it's really important to say that this vision statement is absolutely okay to change as you grow in your journey. It doesn't mean that you're failing. It means that you're growing and you're learning and you're adapting and you're making progress. So I'm going to show you what the blank, it's going to look like a little Mad Lib here, and I'll show you a full example, and then we're going to work through the blanks together, blank by blank. So if we look at the full statement that you'll be filling out, it's a little lengthy, so I'm going to read it out loud and show you kind of how it fits together when we've got it all filled out. So it reads, I want to impact the world by blank, but to do so, I need to first blank. Only then can I blank. So that success to me will look like blank. So a filled out version of this will look like this. I want to impact the world by standing up as a true anti-racist ally. But to do so, I need to first educate and arm myself. Only then can I begin my anti-racist journey of support and allyship. So that success to me will look like filling out this workbook as I learn. So what we'll be doing next is then working through the blanks one by one. And we'll give about a minute at each, and then some examples that you can pull from as well. So I'm going to move over to the first one. I want to impact the world by blank. An example of one could be, I want to impact the world by challenging racism in my family when I'm present. I know this is really pertinent to me as the holidays come up. We're going to move on now to the second blank, which is, but to do so, I need to first get more comfortable with confronting my loved ones, for example. And we'll spend a little bit of time here for you to fill this out. Moving on to the next blank here, if you're ready, which is only then can I blank, which is only then can I call out my uncle at Thanksgiving. And we'll move on to the final one that says, so that success to me will look like blank. And again, this is success that should be personal to you. It should speak to something that is really meaningful to you and your values. So that success to me will look like my uncle stopping saying racist things at family functions. For me, it's about silencing my personally racist uncle. You might hear a train in the background, sorry. And we are done with this portion here, and now we're going to move on to breakout groups. So I think this is the point where we really want to invite y'all to introduce yourselves to one another, talk about why you're here, and maybe if you feel comfortable, and you don't need to, share your personal vision statement and maybe get some inspiration for maybe the way you might change it or adapt it. One sec, I'm sorry. Wonderful. As everyone's sort of trickling in. Okay, thank you. Thumbs up. Okay. As everyone's trickling in here, we're going to move on to this next section here. I hope everyone had a good time to get to know folks who are also in this room, in our Austin design community, creative community, and who are also interested in anti-racism work. So we're going to do a little bit more unpacking for some basic concepts that you can use in your life. And the first one is recognizing racism. And for me, it's a lot about recognizing who's on that other side, recognizing the point of view that someone who is saying something, doing something racist is coming towards me with, so that I know how I can better address myself in a given situation. So I'm going to unpack a couple of the, again, theoretical concepts that Ibram X. Kendi lays out in his book, and share with you maybe a little bit of how you have heard it in your life, and then how you can approach that type of person. So again, we talked a little bit about this definition here, right? A racist is someone who is supporting a racist policy through their action or inaction, or expressing a racist idea. And when we look at maybe a framework for identifying the type of racist that we might be engaging with, if someone is saying something that is racially insensitive, or acting in a way that is racially insensitive to us, is there's kind of really two great pillars that he lays out in his book that I think we can apply. One, are they an assimilationist, which is someone who is expressing the racist idea that a racial group is culturally or behaviorally inferior, and supporting enrichment programs to develop that racial group? Or are they a segregationist, someone who expresses the idea that a race is permanently inferior and can never be developed, and supports policy that segregates away from that racial group? If we look at these two kind of types to identify, it's really interesting, because for me, a lot of the time that I encounter folks, it's oftentimes this assimilationist perspective. Again, this is the idea that a racial group is culturally or behaviorally inferior. Thus, they support what they perceive as benevolently, but these behavioral enrichment programs to develop or upskill that racial group. And in your life, it may have sounded like this. An assimilationist might say, don't wear your hair like that. You won't get hired for the job, right? They might say that because they're like, oh, I'm just looking out for you. I want you to do the best. But what they're implicitly saying is that your hair, your natural hair, is not acceptable for getting a job at all. It may sound like this. If they come here, they should speak the language, which is saying they should come here. But if they do, they should comply with how things are done here. And why? Why is that? So when you speak with someone who may be coming from an assimilationist perspective, the approach that we recommend taking is that oftentimes, if they're coming from a good place, just acknowledge it. I get it, you're trying to come from a good place, but then be critical about why they hold whiteness as the standard to which others should apply. So if they come here, they should speak the language. Well, okay, I get it. You want folks to succeed when they come into a new country, but English isn't the only language that is ever spoken in America. And we can't say that English is the first language spoken in America either. So it's not really fair to say that anyone who comes here, do they speak the language? Do you speak indigenous tongue? No, you don't. So coming to confrontation with a person who is an assimilationist as an anti-racist, we say this is the difficulty of a medium, right? You're more likely to be able to just open the eyes of someone who's an assimilationist by having them question that why they hold whiteness at that standard. And that's a really, really great framework to approach this with. On the other hand, a more difficult person to confront and is a segregationist, which is, again, someone who is expressing the racist idea that that racial groups are permanently inferior and then cannot be developed, thus creates policy that segregates away from that racial group. And in your life, it may have sounded like this. These aren't people, these are animals. Or Asian people are just wired differently. That's why they're so good at math. It's oftentimes, if you're speaking with someone who is a segregationist, they will find a quote unquote biological reason for racism, which we know doesn't exist. Adam Bernberg has a great book about this. So oftentimes, if you are running into someone and you hear them say something like this, you can kind of then tune your ear to be like, okay, they're a segregationist. And if they are a segregationist, the approach then, the recommended approach we have is this. Just know for yourself that oftentimes these feelings come from a place of fear, and this can supersede logic. You're not going to out-reason an emotion. You're just not going to get there. It's really hard to do it, and it will oftentimes just leave you very frustrated. So if you want to move the needle, if you feel inclined to confront this type of person and you want to move the needle even just a little bit, focus on orienting them towards acknowledging a systemic nature of our world. Oftentimes, folks like this will have a hard time making it from the personal to the global. If you can just kind of say, oh, well, why is it that you believe this? Just flip the script and ask them why. And I think the next thing, which is often hard for folks, is that it's okay to walk away. Like if you're coming to a situation where you need to confront one of these types of like folks that are coming from this racist perspective, it's absolutely okay to walk away. One of the things that we'll talk about later on in this training, in this workbook, is basic call out etiquette and philosophy, and that will help you address situations where you encounter these types of people. So I wanted to kind of lay down that foundation and give you these types of frameworks because we wanted to ask as well, does this remind you of anyone in your life? Does this sound like someone in your life at all? You can circle yes or no in the workbook or think yes or no in your brain. And otherwise, what has been the most frustrating part with engaging in those types of folks? Like, if they're one or the other, they're an assimilationist or they're segregationist, what's the most frustrating part in working with those? And I'll give you a minute just to jot that down or think about that for a moment. Okay, and we're gonna move on real quick here. And then I'm going to pass it on actually to Andy, and we're done with most of our education piece, and we're going to move into this activation piece where we're going to start to outline our personal capacity and then make an action plan here. So Andy, please take it away.
Awesome, thanks, Boy. So as she just said, we're going to move into the activation part of this workshop. The first thing that we want you all to remember is that this work can feel pretty overwhelming. We already have busy lives, and sometimes it's kind of hard to know where you can begin or where you can find the information. So our lives can feel kind of like a cluttered desk. It's unorganized. There's no magic to the madness or anything. It just feels completely overwhelming. So it's important here to remember that you only have two hands. In the one hand, you need to carry love for yourself. And we'll talk about what you can do later with your other hand. But 2020, we know in many ways has been a very draining year for all of us. And it's crucial now more than ever to practice self-care. We cannot pour from an empty cup. That's something that my grandfather used to always tell me. You should always know that half of your tank should be filled with self-care and self-preservation. So knowing that you can't pour from an empty cup, ensure that you always have the ability to contribute to anti-racism work by purposely making space for yourself. We love this quote from Michelle Obama: "We need to do a better job putting ourselves higher on our to-do list." So in engaging in anti-racism work, you need to remember that these are normal feelings of, I am tired. It is natural to feel tired because feeling empathy is an action in itself, and you can feel like it takes a toll after time goes on. So it is normal to take a step away from the work. It doesn't mean that you can't return to it later or that you've lost progress, but knowing that you can make the space for yourself for care. Another feeling that you might have now is, sometimes I feel like this is hopeless. Will things really ever change? This work is a long-term commitment and it's hard to see the end, but there's always some great action happening every day. We had a great weekend. So we should be recognizing and celebrating victories no matter how small or big they seem. Some great advice that we like to remember here is to seize pleasure however you can. So when you catch yourself feeling inspired or that something really great happened, consciously make that space to savor the experience and draw that out as long as possible. Now we'll move into our reflection. This is on page 14 in your workbook, and we ask you, what are your radical acts of self-care? Maybe it's taking your dog with you while you buy more plants that you can't fit into your home. Maybe it's bubble bath Wednesdays with a glass of wine or a Topo Chico. So we take some time to write things out in your workbook, or just think them right now in your brain that bring you joy and fill you up, fill your cup up. And if you feel so comfortable to share also in the chat, we'd love to hear what your radical acts of self-care are. We'll give you all just a minute or two to write those down. Got some gardening from Leslie, love that. Roller skating. Oh, I love all of these. Painting, long walks, making music. These are wonderful. Mine was taking my dog to the nursery, buying more plants that I don't have space for. Okay. So as you fill your cup, now you're ready to kind of pour out your effort. But remember here, don't try to do all the things. It can be overwhelming and it can very quickly lead to burnout. So focus on doing what you can with 100% of your effort. All right, let's move into understanding our capacity. What we're going to do now is take some time to reflect on your average days, both what your typical workday might look like and your typical rest day. So if you work a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 6 and your rest days are typically on the weekend, we'll map out what those look like. But maybe you work in the service industry and you have more of an evening typical workday. So we'll take some time for each of us to consider your typical workday and your average rest day. And this is on page, I think, 11 in the workbook. We'll give you all the space to start writing those down in the workbook, but I just wanted to show you a quick snapshot of what a typical day might look like for one of our facilitators here. Do you want to go to the next slide, Boy? Cool. So Kara's got a little baby, and her workday and her rest day begins at the same time. Hashtag mom life. So you know, you wake up and get ready, get the baby ready, practice walking, lunchtime, some space for working, and then, you know, evening things. The rest day is still, again, starting at the same time and still working with the baby, but giving some more time for yourself. So in the workbook on page, let's see, we are on page 15 actually. take some time. We'll give you all about 5 or 6 minutes to write down your average workday and your average rest day. Again, this workbook is yours. You can always go back and just readjust and continue filling out. But now we're going to move into a little bit more some tactical ways that you can confront racism. And I'm going to pass it over to Kara.
All right. Well, so earlier we did talk about anti-racism work and some of the tenets that we believe, and one is that we have a bias towards action. So we want to touch on some actionable ways to engage in anti-racism work. And one such method that we're actually pulling from a sample from a training we do called anti-racism boxing, the call out. And this touches on a tactic and technique that is called call outs. So a call out is a verbal or written challenge towards a person to hold them accountable to what they are saying. This can also be known as a racism or bias disruptor. So a call out, it's a way to readdress a conversation without totally canceling a person out. This is an opportunity to help someone learn and not totally berate them. Remember, we want to assume that people can change, or at least I know I do. I want to assume that I can change people and that there's some goodness somewhere, even if there isn't. But it's important for us as anti-racist allies to feel more comfortable challenging one another on what we say or stand to believe. And humans have been challenging each other since the beginning of time, right? So we hope to empower ourselves and to help empower you to take these techniques into real world situations where you feel a little more comfortable confronting others. And yes, it can be uncomfortable, but it's time to lean into that discomfort. So call out opportunities. When should I call someone out? There's a few things that might be key here. One is when somebody says something insensitive. So if a person makes an offhand racist joke or something that they think is harmless, that's a good time to call someone out. Regardless of their intention, it is good to bring attention to that specifically so they understand that it isn't okay to say certain things out loud. There's also behavioral. So microaggressions take place, especially in the workplace. And this can be something even like a habit of talking over a person of color or another BIPOC employee within the space. If you notice that they keep interrupting them, talking over them, that is a good place and time to disrupt that behavior. There's also calling out perpetuation of white supremacy. So if somebody is standing up white culture and putting it on a pedestal, this is something that is good to interrupt. So for example, if you've ever heard the phrase, well, this is fundamentally American, or this is what it means to be American, that is putting the culture, like especially white culture, on a pedestal. So it's good to interrupt that. And when calling somebody out, there are some few things that you can keep to as far as etiquette is concerned. So one is try to create space between your emotions and your reactions. So I know Ploy touched on this earlier, but sometimes your passion is used to discredit you in an argument. Yes, one side, like if they get really angry, they might think like, it's because I'm passionate and I really feel about this and I know I'm right. But for some reason, when you do it, they then look at it like, oh, you're just being angry and volatile. You're that angry person. Like, why can't you just take a joke? And it kind of discredits everything you're saying. So if you can, try to create that space between your emotions. The second one is look after your psychological and your physical safety. So remember to take care of yourself. Self-care is so important, and to look after your well-being. There will be situations that may put you at risk or where the individual called out can become angry. Be aware of the possibility of this and put yourself first, because we want to fight on. We want to continue to do this work on a daily basis. And to do so, you have to be able to walk away from that situation okay. The third one is you're not trying to win. And I know that it's very difficult, right? We want to tell people why they might be wrong in this situation. But what we're trying to really do is plant seeds of possibility of change and to call out or disrupt something that is happening. This doesn't mean that we're going to just like bash them into submission, because unfortunately, sometimes you cannot, as Ploy said earlier, you cannot argue away their emotion or their feeling that they have. It might be impossible. So it's best to remember that all we can do is try to do right by others, do right by ourselves, and to help in any way that we can and push forward. So another one is engage publicly and then follow up privately if possible. And we say this because one, we do think that it is important to call out anything in public first. If you hear a comment If it's awkward, if it's offensive, call that out in the moment so that they know it's not okay. But then do follow up with them privately to expand upon that, because there is a stigma surrounding being called out, and there could be backlash due to feeling humiliated, they were embarrassed, like you made them look bad. So yes, you have to address it. We want people to know that it's not okay to say certain things, but if possible, circle back and emphasize or expand upon that privately as well. Like, hey, this is why I think it wasn't okay what you said. Another thing that you can do, and know that it's okay to walk away sometimes. If you can tell a situation is getting too heated, someone is looking for a reason to keep fighting, or even the argument has just become circular, and no matter what you say, you cannot change this person's idea or even plant a seed in this moment, then walk away. It's okay. And remember, sometimes we do have to pick our battles. And then 6, be direct. So don't beat around the bush. It's exactly what it sounds like. Be straightforward in what you are saying, and politely if possible. And lastly is speak in a way in which they might understand. So don't try to talk down or belittle, condescend someone, but rather speak to them in a way that you know it might affect them. So if there's someone who they pride themselves on being very logical, try to use data to back up an argument. Or if there's somebody that they respond to personal stories and like feelings, draw on that heartstring and those feelings to get a point across to them. And you can also cater the type of call out, just like how I said you can cater the way that you talk to someone, you can cater your call outs to fit the situation or the type of person you're confronting as well. So one type of call out, and this is from our anti-racism boxing, so everything is kind of in the kickboxing lingo, but one is to reflect. Think of this as you're bobbing or weaving in a fight. Some of the best racism disruptors or callouts come in the forms of questions. So the question is kind of that bobbing, it leads away to further explanation and it creates more waves in the conversation. One way to do that is if somebody's telling a racist joke, for example, you can call them out by simply asking, why is that funny? And this might cause a temporary awkward silence because they realize they now have to explain why they believe that there was humor in that statement. And even though if you're like me, you don't like awkward silence, lean into that discomfort and let it sit there for a while so that they have to think about what they said and why it was not appropriate. Another thing you can do is ask them, what did you mean when you said this? Or what do you mean when you say ... So lead them to further explain so that you can break down the argument more. And the last one we have there is, if they give you some kind of statistic you're not really sure about or trying to back up an argument, just say, can you help me understand where to find the evidence of that statement? Can you help me find maybe the article you read or where you're learning this information from? Another tactic is what we think of as blocking. So this is your defense, you're blocking. If somebody says something, you can use this to block a comment, to put a pause, and to move towards another discussion. So you're trying to block that movement, move it somewhere else. So one way to do that is, and this is a common microaggression that happens a lot. And it's if somebody's telling a story, they tend to bring in, for some reason, the person's skin color, their ethnicity, their culture, their sexual orientation when it's not necessary or vital to the story. So one way to call that out is just to say, hey, is the fact that they are blank vital to the story? And then just kind of gets them thinking like, oh, why am I pointing that out? Why does this need to be pointed out? Another one is, hey, that statement may be offensive to others. I think we should change the topic. And that one is more straightforward. And the last one is, well, I don't agree about that, but here's something we can all agree on. And you can either insert a joke or just something that you find agreeable, such as, hey, I don't agree on that, but I agree that this meeting could have been an email. And lastly, there's the immediate halt. This is your jab, your punch, your kick, right? So some callouts are straightforward and can be used to put a full halt or stop on a conversation. So if they say something really offensive, you could just say, hey, that comment was not necessary or acceptable, and just end it as that. You can also say, that's not funny to me. It sounds racist. And I would say the key thing here is not saying, hey, it's not funny because you're racist, but it's not funny, it sounds racist. This way, maybe you can avoid a little bit of that immediate backlash from being called racist, and they can think about why what they said is racist. And then the last one is, what you said made me feel really uncomfortable. And this is something that I have personally used, especially if I'm in a situation with other BIPOC people around me. And I am, for example, like a fair-skinned Latino woman. But if I have other people who are darker and they make a comment that is offensive, I'm going to put that weight on myself and draw the attention by saying, hey, that made me feel really uncomfortable. It is not everybody else's or BIPOC's duty to educate us all and to correct every aggression. So as allies, we really need to take on that responsibility as well. And we understand that direct confrontation is difficult and it is not everybody's cup of tea. It is hard for some people to do that. And that's okay. It might not be your desired way to engage. Not everybody can handle face-to-face confrontation. We hope that you can empower yourselves to do so. But if not, there are other ways that you can stand up for and with others as allies. So one thing we can do is take a little quiz here just to learn a few of the learning styles and find out ways that you can engage. So we're just going to walk through this quiz. I believe this is page 19 and 20 in the workbook if you want to follow along. If not, just follow along here on the slides. So the first question, I understand more clearly when I have A, done something, B, seen something, or C, said something. When ordering food at a restaurant, I will A, read the menu and choose based on what looks good, B, look at what others have ordered or pictures on the menu, or C, ask the waiter for their recommendations. When working through a tough decision, I A, take a walk and then tackle it head on, B, make a list of pros and cons, and C, talk things over, listen to advice from friends. When you see something upsetting in the news, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? A, I wish that there was something I could do. B, where can I find information on what I can do to help? Or C, I wonder what other sources are saying about this. And then when I need help, I A, figure it out on my own, B, do research or watch tutorials, or C, ask others for help. All right, so tally those up. It's gonna go by mostly A's, B's, C's, and you might be a mix, and that's totally fine. But if you got mostly A's, you may be a hands-on learner. And with hands-on learning, you're a learner that absorbs information by working through a problem. So this is you actively doing, touching, moving, building something. If you are someone who does design work, it means maybe you're someone who gets up, puts sticky notes on the wall, you write things, you move around, you shift boards, you have to actively work through it. And types of anti-racism work that can fit within this learning style include attending protests, calling local representatives, signing petitions, and discussing racism with family and friends. And if you're in the workbook at the bottom, we will actually have parts that link to our website that can give you some more ideas of things you can do that are hands-on. B, or mostly B, is you're a visual learner. So visual learners do best when they can see something for themselves. This includes visuals in the form of graphics, images, when they're using symbols, when they see something take place. And types of anti-racism work that fit within this learning style can be reading books and articles, digesting information on graphics, and watching shows and TV shows that showcase Black stories. And mostly C's. So you may be an auditory learner. Auditory learners will soak up knowledge by hearing and then developing a greater memory for recall using that information. So you're someone that you like to have in-person conversations, or you might like to teach other people and that helps you learn something more. So that's one, too. And types that go with auditory learner could be listening to audiobooks, TED Talks, and amplifying or Black stories by watching TV shows and movies that do so. So that could be choosing to watch Dear White People. And there are many other types of engagement and learning styles. This barely touches on a few, but for example, if you're someone who likes to literally put your money where your mouth is, you might choose to contribute through donations and Ploy's going to walk you through a few of these right here.
Money, please. Okay, these are all the some notable causes that I really wanted to highlight. I'm not going to read through all the definitions here. I'm just going to give you the name and a theme, right? So the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, if you're really dedicated into justice and litigation and that type of fight, really recommend that resource. The Thurgood Marshall College Fund, if really interested in giving back to education, HBCUs, and predominantly Black institutions, is a great fund to give some dull hairs to. Intersectionalism is essential. So the Trans Women of Color Collective does a great matter of work for those who are gender nonconforming and trans. So it's really, really important to work with that organization. Something that's extremely pertinent right now is Fair Fight, which is Stacey Abrams' organization promoting fair elections in Georgia. Y'all, if that gives my gold star for things that really need some assistance in this time as we go into runoffs in Georgia. And as the holidays come up, really want y'all to support some small business, some small creatives as well. And so Etsy has a great list of Black-owned Etsy shops. So support Black creatives in buying your holiday presents this year. And then Eat Okra is another application you can use that is a guide to Black-owned restaurants if you like to support local Black business or find a new place to eat. Oh, I don't know why it's the same image here, but it's a great resource. Please use that application. So if you are a person that maybe limited on time but has more flexibility and funds, this is another great way to engage in anti-racism work. Okay. Nom, 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 back to you. Andy is going to tell us this next portion here. Let's make a plan.
All right, let's do it. All right, so we figured out what we want to do, why we're here today. That was the personal vision activity that we did. We also looked to understand our capacity. That was when we mapped our typical rest day, typical work day. And then we also learned what our preferred approach is with that learning style quiz. So now what we'll do is map out a plan, how we can engage in anti-racism with milestones. So on this page, maybe ladies, y'all can help me figure out which page we're on now. What are some milestones you can use to really achieve your personal vision? Something to remember here is know that your milestones don't have to like all be equal here in terms of time. They can all be different paces. So one milestone might take a week, another milestone might take 1 to 3 months. It's just kind of like your guiding light, your North Star to help you understand where do you want to be in 3 to 6 months. And importantly, you don't always have to do all the milestones at one time. So for example, a milestone might be to engage in passive ways to consume more diverse stories as I progress through my day. That can be something simple like just taking an hour to do research on some blogs that you're interested in or some podcasts that you want to listen to. And that might be a short time frame, like a day or two, where you figure out what those diverse stories will be. Milestone 2 could be find ways to use my voice for anti-racism work, first with friends and allies, so it's safe to make mistakes as I learn. This one I'd say could take quite a bit of time. You want to find that community where you can share your stories and work through some questions that you might have. It can be a while to find those people who you can really spar with. So that might be, like a 2-month, 3-month milestone. And then the third milestone could be add more anti-racism into my social media feeds and daily actions like checking my emails. This could also be a short one. There's some great resources out there, like One Anti-Racist Act a Day is a way that you can subscribe and see actual actions you can take every single day for your anti-racism journey. Then there's Anti-Racism Daily that highlights stories and different blogs, and those are some good resources, as well as awesome Instagram accounts like So You Want to Talk About or Check Your Privilege. We actually won't be taking the time here to map out those milestones because we want to give you all the space to really think about that. And, sometimes these don't just come to your brain immediately. So that's in your workbook and you can use that page to kind of map those out at a later time today. But what we will do is plan our anti-racism journey using what we did in the workday and rest day. So looking back at that page what your typical workday and your typical rest day look like. How can you fit anti-racism engagement into your everyday life? So what this might look like. Great. This is an example of what anti-racism might look like for you. And knowing that it doesn't have to be, a huge thing every single day. I think anti-racism can come in different sizes. Going to a protest, especially during a pandemic, can feel not safe for everybody. And so that's not something that you want to do right now, and that's all right. So you could do different things like picking out podcasts or diversifying your social media feeds, and knowing that these pieces are just something that you can do every single day, and they don't have to be really, magnificent events. So earlier we saw that Kara's typical day was waking up at 6 a.m. and getting ready and getting the squish ready. That's what she calls her bebe. But during that time, you could listen to a podcast that you have researched previously. Additionally, you could take some time to engage with allies at work. Different things that you could do just to weave into your everyday life for your anti-racism work. All right. So what we're going to do now is break up into groups again. We'll give you all a couple of minutes, and it's okay if you want to just kind of verbally talk about some ways that you can weave this in, or if you want to just silently as a group work in the workbook and fill it out yourself. It's kind of up to you on a group by group basis. Poya will put us all into breakout rooms right now. And we'll again be in the main room if y'all have any questions.
I like my breakout room powers. It just
Oh, were you able to put them back in the room?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And anyone who's in this room, if you want to chat, if you want to share, if you want to bounce ideas, I'm also going to share my screen. These are some additional ideas that you can include in your plan if you so choose so. Depending on the type of learner you are, the type of engagement style you want. I know that myself, I'm definitely a hands-on person. I'd like to attend to the protests or provide donations. I like to yell at strangers on the phone via my representatives. And maybe one day I'll run for local office, who knows? But if you're in Austin, I definitely recommend a couple of groups, especially if you're a designer, you work in tech. There's a organization called Tech Can Do Better that I recommend following. They have community calls every week that are really great, as well as they do talks and different types of engagement. You can engage with your local activism community. If you're in Austin, the Austin Justice Coalition also does a lot of local events. If you like to work with kids, Harvest Youth is a great organization here in Austin. If you like to work with children, and I primarily work with girl groups. I think it's Girls Who Code is great, as well as I think it's like Girl Power Foundation. I need to remember. They're also good. Okay. And if you want to exchange any LinkedIn requests, that's a great way to continue to connect if you don't want to get personal on Facebook or Instagram. LinkedIn is benign. And so feel free to connect you can connect with us, you can connect with one another. Building our community as anti-racist activists and allies is extremely important to the work that we do, and so that we can continue to do it. Okay.
Just broke the arm off this chair.
Oh no.
Oh, my cat wants to get in. I'm going to close the room and then open the door for my cat to come in. One sec.
Wonderful. See people trickling back in. Welcome back, everyone.
My favorite is when everyone comes back in and we get like the glimpse of people's faces as they have turned on their cameras. Hello. Surprise. So we've just got a couple more minutes left, and we just want to wrap up. The breakout rooms are closing. People are trickling. We've got about 20 seconds left. I hope that everyone had an opportunity to at least connect with one another, maybe share a little bit about what they're hoping to do, some ideas, cross-pollination of ideas. You can't have a shortage of them, right? So really excited and just thrilled to have everyone here today. Got about 5 seconds left before everyone is just jerked back in here so kindly. And then we'll do a little bit of a wrap up today. Okay, I think we've got everyone in the room here. So again, thank you so much for attending our Austin Design Week session. And what we have left for you is just simply a call for continuous action. I hope today is just a blip in your journey as it grows, as it meanders, as you bring others with you and kind of push the work of anti-racism, uplifting our marginalized communities forward. So excited to have you here and excited to let you have our gift to you, which is this workbook. And I hope you find it fruitful. So again, I just want to repeat a couple of our core tenets here, which is the first is we as anti-racists reject the premise that one race is better than another, which means we always challenge our own racist beliefs and the racist systems that we exist within. And we are also intolerant of intolerance. So we challenge the racist beliefs and actions in others. And then finally, we have a bias towards action so that we are unafraid of engaging in anti-racist work, no matter how big or small those actions might be every day. So being an anti-racist is an imperfect journey towards personal growth and action, and we cannot wait to take this imperfect journey with you. So if you want more resources to sign up for our upcoming trainings or community calls, you can find us on antiracismactivation.com or follow us on Instagram just to put some more stuff in your feed. Sorry, my contact is acting up. It sounds like I'm crying, but I'm also full of passion. So we are excited to continue to connect with you. Our mailing list is the best way to reach out. My name is Ploy. Andy and Kara are our other facilitators. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I just wanted to give a couple reminders. You will be in the chat. There will be a feedback link if anybody wants to provide feedback on this session. We also, obviously, this is only Tuesday. We have events going on for the rest of the week. So I would love to see you guys in some of those. And if you want to connect with anybody from this session, go ahead and join the Austin Design Week Slack. That'll be the easiest way without having to use LinkedIn or anything like that to connect with other people that